Welcome to HB Tuner's Ford Gen 2 Coyote Training Part 32. This training module we're going to be exploring how to work with our torque-based idle control. This is relatively simple, but there are some things that we need to know and pay attention to in order to get this dialed in successfully. Without further wait, let's jump in so we can check this out.
Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at working with our idle control in our Gen 2 Ford Coyote applications. Now, our idle control is going to be something that's a relatively complicated topic. It's going to be pretty simple to dial in once you know what to look for. We're going to be taking a look at the process here of how to make some adjustments to our idle. Now, this is a basic bolt-on Coyote that we're going to be working with in this example. So this is our 2017 GT Auto here that we have for our course. I will be swapping on a supercharger and probably a larger throttle body. So we're going to be taking a look at going into the idle control once you start to change out some parts. Basic bolt-on Coyotes, so just an intake, maybe intake manifold, throttle body, headers, exhaust. Not a whole lot of changes we need to make to our idle control. You might want to bump up your idle speed from stock to make it a little bit smoother. We'll find that once you start to make some pretty large radical modifications. So if you're putting in a positive displacement supercharger, a Whipple, Kenny Bell, and maybe you're doing bigger injectors and you're changing out the throttle body to a much larger than stock throttle body size, then we might have to jump in and start to deal with some more radical changes in the idle control. But the goal and the process to dial in the idle control is going to be the same if we need to make our update and changes. There's some key marker points that we can take a look at in our VCM scanner for logging channels that'll essentially guide us in what we need to do in updating our idle control routine. It's actually relatively straightforward. There's only a handful of tables that we really need to adjust or touch to get our idle dialed in. Now, one thing I want to mention is the Gen 2 Coyotes are going to be a torque-based idle control. Everything is going to be torque-based. It's a departure from the Gen 1 Coyotes, where it was more airflow-based. We had airflow-based tables to bring the throttle angle up to a certain level or certain range. We also had more direct control over the spark timing in the idle control routine, so the spark timing feedback to reach a certain desired idle speed. Now, all of that is gone and it's replaced with these torque-based tables. It's actually relatively simple, again, to dial this in. You just need to know what to look for and what changes to make. So I'm going to be outlining that here. And again, whether it's going to be a basic bolt-on Coyote or you have cams or a supercharger or a twin turbo setup, you'll find that setting up and dialing in your idle control will be pretty much the same, and it's relatively straightforward. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and I cannot stress this enough, you want to make sure that your airflow model is nailed down as best as possible, meaning our MAF curves tuned out, our speed density tables are tuned, everything is dialed in, and we also have good throttle body data. If you have problems with idle control, a lot of time if you changed your throttle body from stock to an aftermarket unit, a lot of times the idle control problems are related to not having the proper throttle body data. That will essentially create all kinds of modeling problems within the torque to throttle plate movement relationship, and you'll find that the idle control's going to almost never be right, and you'll be making a lot of broad changes into some torque tables and trying to get the idle right, and essentially going to be muddying the waters. It all boils down to having good data. So we want to make sure we have good MAF calibration, speed densities dialed in, and we have good throttle body data. So all those are really key, really important. And at this point in the training course, we've went through dialing in the mass airflow speed density. So I know that's solid on my particular test vehicle here, and the throttle body is stock. So I don't need to worry about the throttle body data. But I wanted to preface it by going and making sure that was very clear that those parameters need to be dialed in before attempting to really fine tune anything with the idle control, because it throws everything off if those parameters are off. Okay, so let's jump in here. I have my 2017 Mustang GT automatic file open for the test vehicle. That's the test vehicle we're dealing with here. I'm sitting in the test vehicle right now to do this particular tutorial. We will be taking a look at some logging and then changes based on logging parameters in the VCM scanner that we're going to be going through in this tutorial. So that's why I'm actually sitting in the car. I'm going to do some live demonstration with dialing in the idle control. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is locate where we can source the idle control tables from. So if we go up here into our engine tab and then give it a second here, we're going to go from general into idle. Now under idle here, we have a general tab, we have RPM, we have airflow, and finally torque. So these are the four tabs that we're going to be working with for programming our idle control. Now, before we jump in here and talk about some of the individual tables or scalar values that we would have here to program, I want to talk about what's going on within the idle control routine because it is torque based. In a torque-based control, we have two different key areas that the engine control module can use, or tools that it can use to manipulate the engine's torque output to reach a certain desired torque. So everything's going to be in language of torque. At idle, we'll find that we have a certain level of torque we need to idle at in order to maintain a desired idle speed. So if we want to idle at 700 RPM, we might need 8 pound-feet of torque. If we want to idle at 1,000 RPM.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.